After the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476, the Eastern Roman Empire, better known as the Byzantine Empire, assumed the role of a major global power. The brightest minds at the time flocked there, including military engineers. And around that time, the Byzantines invented their own sort of napalm, calling it Greek fire. Pontic warriors used something similar in the 1st century BC against the Roman Empire, but that napalm was perfected much later, around the 7th century AD. The Byzantines put special flamethrowers on their ships, through which the Greek fire was fed, and used this superweapon until the fall of Constantinople. Historical documents describe that the mixture had a jelly-like structure, instantly ignited and burned even on water. The potency of the Greek fire was also felt by the Kievan Rus warriors who regularly raided the territories of the Byzantine Empire in the 8th to 9th centuries. During the defense of Constantinople against Arab and Persian invaders, Byzantine warriors used Greek fire to create a wall of fire around the city, through which the enemy had difficulty penetrating. When enemies besieged cities and fortresses, Greek fire was used to protect walls and attack enemies. This weapon was especially useful for defending against enemy soldiers trying to climb the walls, because it could be aimed at them and set them on fire. Greek fire was such a powerful weapon that its composition was carefully guarded as a state secret, and after the fall of the Byzantine Empire, the secret was lost forever. However, records show that it contained a potent mixture of oil, quicklime, and other unknown ingredients. This combination is believed to have made it one of the most flammable and dangerous substances of its time. With this weapon in their possession, the Byzantines were able to repel invaders and hold their ground during the defense of their capital, Constantinople. But as you know, Constantinople still fell under the assault of the Turks, and more modern powerful weapons before which the walls of the city cannot hold, cannons, and in particular, a marvel of Turk military engineering, the basilic, or the Ottoman Cannon, which is considered one of the largest and most powerful artillery ever made. It was 24 feet long and could fire cannonballs weighing 1,200 pounds. The cannon itself weighed 40,000 pounds, so it was dragged along the walls of Constantinople by 60 oxen and 400 men. Although the cannon did enormous damage to the walls of Constantinople, it was not entirely practical. After each shot, the cannon got very hot, so it could only be used 3 times a day. And even with such careful use, the cannon lasted only 6 weeks before it stopped working. But since we are talking about amazing firearms, we have another noteworthy one, the duckfoot pistols. And perhaps by the name, you could already imagine how it would look like. Despite the fact that this weapon had a very funny shape, it was quite effective for its purpose, namely the confrontation of one person against a group of people. That's why it was popular with bank security guards, prison guards, and sea captains. Until revolver designs were improved in the 1830s, the only way to increase the rate of fire was to create multiple barrels that could fire either all at once or at the user's choice. The number of barrels was usually limited to a maximum of 3, mostly due to weight considerations. The pistol equivalent to volley fire was the Duck's pistol, which had 4 barrels mounted on the same breech. The barrels were fan-shaped at an angle of about 60 degrees, which allowed the bullets to disperse in hopes of hitting multiple targets. It was an anti-personnel close combat weapon that was most effective when used against crowds in confined spaces. On the battlefield, however, this gun was very rarely, if ever, used. To load it, you had to load each barrel separately as a separate pistol, which made the reloading process extremely slow. But Duck's foot pistols would have appealed to anyone who regularly encountered an unruly and potentially aggressive crowd. Armed with such a gun, a determined man could easily subdue an angry mob. But you know who could handle an aggressive crowd better than a Duck's foot pistol? A war elephant. Although difficult to call it a pocket weapon, the war elephant was indispensable on the battlefield in the ancient world, especially in ancient India. There is no accurate data regarding the beginning of human use of elephants in combat. It is known that fighting elephants were used in ancient China during the Shan dynasty. War elephants are mentioned in the ancient Indian epic Mahabharata. The armies of ancient India, which had long been home to a large number of elephants, used them regularly, and the elephant was considered the main heavy combat unit. This use was often due not so much to the elephant's combat effectiveness as to the psychological effects of the mere sight of this human-driven animal. Such fighting machines especially impressed warriors who had never seen an elephant before. For example, when Alexander the Great's army went into battle with the Persians, the Greek soldiers who had never seen elephants before could not understand what kind of creatures the Persians were controlling, and at first thought they were demons. But soon, Alexander's soldiers realized that they were just animals, shook off their fright, and were able to defeat the Persians at the Battle of Gaugamela. But the loss was due to the fact that the Persians, not accustomed to the fighting elephants themselves, hoped to use them to push through the formidable Macedonian phalanx and intimidate the enemy. However, the elephants did not take part in the battle and were captured by Alexander's army, and then used during the further campaign of the Macedonian army to the east. As with the horse, the war elephant is an indispensable combat unit in the fight, but compared to a horse, the elephant's mass was quite an advantage. For example, the elephant's skin could withstand dozens of arrow hits, and sometimes elephants came back from the battlefield covered with arrows like porcupines. But later, they decided to reinforce the already tough elephant skin with armor, which made the elephants a walking tank. Armoring elephants were conceived in the 7th century BC in India, and originally, this armor was made of several layers of cowhide. Later, the elephant's armor was made of leather and iron plates, and the trunk was also covered with iron plates, sometimes with sharp spikes. The equipment of the elephant rider also improved, gaining a shield and javelins. In the Upper Middle Ages, Indian fighting elephants already wore complete chainmail armor. The armor usually consisted of small and large plates of steel, which were connected by means of ring weaving. A complete set of armor consisted of about 8,350 plates with a total weight of 350 pounds. Also, unlike the horse, the elephant had tusks, which people had learned to use effectively in battle. There are known cases where the tip of the tusk was used as spears, and sometimes full-fledged swords were attached to the tusks. That made the elephant's already dangerous natural weapon incredibly lethal. But even this was not enough for humans, so sometimes these tips were treated with a special poison. Some sources mention that trained elephants were able to throw spears with their trunks. And just imagine what fear this 5-ton living fighting machine caused the soldiers when it ran at them. And elephants run pretty fast for their weight. They can reach speeds of up to 25 miles per hour. That's almost the maximum speed limit for World War II tanks. This creature, however, was very versatile in the war. For one thing, an elephant could haul very heavy loads behind him. Fighting elephants were often used to tow heavy combat vehicles and served as transport to move large number of warriors, usually archers. Secondly, such war machines could easily breach the gates of castles. Sometimes, they even tied elephants together in pairs to increase their penetration power. That's why you can see in India that the gates of ancient fortresses have spikes. The tactics of using elephants gradually changed. In antiquity and the Middle Ages, they usually used separate groups of elephants, which, with little support from infantry, attacked enemy lines, not only breaking through their lines, but also having a significant psychological impact. This was due to the relative novelty of using this fighting force. Subsequently, the situation changed in the later Middle Ages when combat elephants played the role of supporting positions for the infantry, a kind of mobile fortress. Also, from these mobile fortresses, archers could fire, which essentially turned the elephants into the analog of a modern combat helicopter. The elephant was also used as an observation or command post for the warlord. There was a known case when the observation post of the commander was made in the form of a tower, which was located on the top of 2 elephants at the same time. This location was very convenient because from the height, the commander could see the battlefield from afar, and the elephant could easily take the commander out of the battle and retreat in case of military failure. But the most interesting way to use a fighting elephant in battle was invented by the Khmer Empire. They attached a ballistic to the elephant, turning it into a real ancient tank. Proof of this use of elephants is found in the drawings carved in the stones of Khmer. But as you have probably already realized, the use of the elephants in warfare was a real abuse of the animal. Elephants are kind and incredibly intelligent animals and were reluctant to kill people. So elephant riders often gave them wine and fumed with intoxicating herbs to make the animal aggressive. But such an elephant was often uncontrollable, and the intoxicated animal could disobey its rider and run towards its army, trampling its own soldiers. That happened very often. For this purpose, the rider had a poisoned stake with him, which in extreme cases killed the poor animal. By the way, during the Second Punic War, the commander of Carthage, Hannibal, led his army, including fighting elephants, through the snowy Alps to Rome, where some of his elephants died of the cold, while others could not survive the first winter in Italy. As a result, the elephants managed to engage in only one battle. But during the Second Punic War, another amazing weapon that is hard to believe existed was invented and used: the claw of Archimedes. When the Roman fleet attacked Syracuse, home of Archimedes, in 215 BC, Archimedes constructed a super weapon of his time, the claw of Archimedes, also known as the iron claw. The weapon was a hook attached to a large crane. When a ship approached the walls of the city, the hook would grab the vessel and the crane would turn and tip it over. With this weapon, Syracuse was able to repel the attack and discourage the Romans from invading the territory again for several years. The Greek historian Polybus wrote, "Let down an iron hand swung on a chain, by which the man who guided the crane, having fastened on some part of the prow where he could get a hold, pressed on the lever of the machine inside the wall. And when he had thus lifted the prow and made the vessel rest upright on its stern, he fastened the lever of his machine so that it could not be moved, and then suddenly slackened the hand and chain by means of a rope and pulley. The result was that many of the vessels heeled over and fell on their sides. Some completely capsized, while the greater number, by their prows coming down suddenly from a height, dipped low in the sea, shipped a great quantity of water, and became a scene of the utmost confusion." But according to the Greek historian, Archimedes invented another amazing weapon to defend Syracuse: the giant mirror that could set ships on fire from a distance. And modern engineers could not believe in the existence of such a weapon for a long time until they recreated it themselves. A test of the Archimedes heat ray was carried out in 1973 by the Greek scientist Ioannis Sakas. The experiment took place at the Skaramangas naval base outside Athens. On this occasion, 70 mirrors were held up by Greek sailors, each with a copper coating and a size of around 5 to 3 feet. The mirrors were pointed at the plywood mock-up of a Roman warship at a distance of around 160 feet. When the mirrors were focused accurately, the ship burst into flames within a few seconds. The plywood ship had a coating of tar paint. Sakas said after the experiment, there's no doubt in his mind the great inventor could have used bronze mirrors to scuttle the Romans. What is the most incredible ancient weapon you know? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to know about another amazing weapon that Archimedes invented, you can watch this video. And also, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and give us a like. If you want to support the channel financially, the link to the Patreon is in the description. See you around.